Pause for a moment. Before you continue with the noise of your day, allow your heart to become still. There are moments that arrive quietly, moments that cannot force their way into your attention. They simply wait until your spirit is ready to receive them. This is one of those moments. You have wondered why certain paths suddenly closed before you could walk through them. You have questioned why conversations ended unexpectedly, why plans changed without warning, and why people who once seemed certain slowly drifted away. You searched for ordinary explanations, believing perhaps it was coincidence or unfortunate timing. Yet what if there was another layer to the story? What if there were unseen acts of kindness unfolding beyond your awareness? Listen carefully, for this is a fictional story of hope and divine imagination, created to remind you that even when life feels uncertain, love can be working in quiet ways. There is someone whose heart has become deeply connected with yours, though the full story has not yet unfolded. This person carries a compassion that has grown stronger through trials they have never spoken about. They have learned that true love is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it protects without asking for recognition. You have mistaken silence for distance. You believed the absence of words meant the absence of care. But silence has many languages. There is a silence born from fear. There is a silence born from confusion. And then there is the silence that stands between someone you love and a storm they refuse to let reach you. Not every battle is meant to become your burden. Not every difficult truth must arrive before its proper season. The heart connected to yours has been carrying more than you realize. While you questioned why certain doors remained closed, another heart was praying that those same doors would never open, because beyond them waited consequences you could not yet see. This was never about keeping you in darkness. It was about allowing your light to grow strong enough before facing certain shadows. Imagine standing beside a river whose surface appears calm while hidden currents move beneath it. If someone gently asked you to step back without explaining why, you might feel disappointed. You might even feel forgotten. Only later would you discover the current was far stronger than it appeared. Would you call that rejection? Or would you recognize it as protection? Many moments in your life have felt exactly like that river. You were certain you understood the direction your journey should take. Yet your path bent unexpectedly. You cried over delays. You mourned opportunities that slipped away. You wondered whether heaven had forgotten your prayers. But sometimes the answer to a prayer arrives wearing the clothing of disappointment. Sometimes mercy looks exactly like a closed door. Sometimes grace sounds like silence. And sometimes love hides behind unanswered questions until your heart is prepared to understand. The story unfolding around your life has never been as simple as it appeared. There have been conversations that never reached your ears. Decisions quietly changed. Moments when another soul chose patience instead of pressure. Moments when they accepted misunderstanding rather than allowing you to carry unnecessary pain. You assumed they were doing nothing. In reality, they were choosing something very difficult. They were choosing restraint. Few people understand how heavy that choice can become. To protect another person often requires accepting that they may never know what was sacrificed on their behalf. That is one of the quietest forms of love. It asks for no applause. It expects no reward. It simply continues because the safety of another heart matters more than personal recognition. Perhaps you have experienced seasons when your own heart felt unusually restless. You sensed that something important was happening somewhere beyond your vision. You could not explain it. You simply felt it. Those feelings were not meaningless within this story. Sometimes the soul notices movements long before the mind can explain them. There are moments when peace arrives without visible reason. There are moments when sudden caution settles over your spirit. There are moments when an unexpected delay changes everything. Each moment becomes another thread woven into a larger design that can only be understood after time has passed. You often ask why life refuses to reveal the entire picture immediately. Consider the sunrise. If the entire brightness burst across the sky in one instant, your eyes could hardly bear it. Instead, dawn arrives gently. One color appears. Then another. The darkness slowly releases its hold. Understanding often follows the same rhythm. Truth comes in portions. Wisdom arrives step by step. And hope grows strongest when it has room to breathe. The one connected to your future has learned this lesson through tears. They once believed every truth should be spoken immediately. Every emotion should be expressed. Every fear should be shared. Life taught them otherwise. Not because honesty is unimportant, but because timing carries its own wisdom. A seed planted during winter does not fail because it refuses to bloom immediately. It simply understands the season. So too has this quiet protector learned to recognize seasons. There is a season to speak. A season to wait. A season to comfort. A season to prepare. Right now, they have been living inside one of those silent seasons. You have interpreted that silence through the lens of loneliness. Yet from another perspective, it has been one long act of care. If only you could see the countless small choices unfolding beyond your sight. If only you could witness the prayers whispered in private. If only you knew how many times your name became a quiet hope carried inside another heart. No grand announcements. No dramatic declarations. Only steady compassion. This is rarely the kind of story the world celebrates. The world often applauds loud promises. But heaven notices faithful hearts. The greatest acts of love are often invisible while they are happening. A tree spends years strengthening its roots before anyone admires its height. Likewise, lasting love often grows beneath the surface before anyone recognizes its strength. There is another part of this story you have not yet considered. Protection is not only about preventing pain. Sometimes protection is preparing someone to carry unexpected joy. Joy can change a life just as dramatically as sorrow. Receiving a blessing before you are emotionally ready can become overwhelming. So your journey has included hidden preparation. The patience you disliked. The lessons you resisted. The waiting that seemed endless. Each one quietly shaped your heart. Even now, there are pieces falling into place without your awareness. Conversations beginning. Old misunderstandings fading. Unexpected courage awakening inside someone who once feared every uncertain step. The story is moving. Slowly. Quietly. Purposefully. Nothing meaningful is standing still. You may look around and believe nothing has changed. But rivers carve mountains without making headlines. Stars continue their journey whether anyone watches or not. And faithful hearts continue loving even when nobody applauds. Your story belongs to that kind of quiet miracle. Not the miracle that shouts. The miracle that endures. Not the miracle that dazzles for one moment. The miracle that transforms a lifetime. Still, there remains one truth you have not yet discovered. There was a particular moment. A moment so small that almost no one would have noticed it. It lasted only a short time. Yet everything after that moment began moving in a different direction. The one connected to your journey made a choice. No one celebrated it. No one understood its importance. But from that single decision, countless future possibilities quietly changed. You have never heard the full story of that choice. Not yet. And until that story is revealed, many events in your own life will continue to seem like unrelated coincidences. But they were never coincidences inside this fictional tale. They were echoes. Echoes of one quiet decision made out of love. That hidden decision is where the next chapter truly begins. And before its meaning can be understood, another unseen piece of the story must be revealed. There are moments in every story that appear ordinary while they are happening, yet years later they become the turning point that changed everything. This was one of those moments. The choice your soulmate made was not dramatic. There were no crowds watching. No voices applauded. No one knew that a quiet decision was sending gentle ripples into a future that would one day touch your heart. They stood at the edge of a difficult situation, holding information that could have been shared immediately. It would have been easier to speak. It would have been easier to let every burden fall where it may. But instead, they paused. They chose wisdom over impulse. They chose patience over panic. Above all, they chose to protect rather than react. In this fictional tale, heaven saw something beautiful in that decision. Not because silence always solves every problem, but because love sometimes understands that timing can be just as important as truth itself. While you continued living your daily life, unaware of what had taken place, your soulmate quietly carried questions that could have become your questions. They carried worries that might have stolen your peace. They faced uncertainty without allowing it to become your weight. Perhaps you wondered why certain conversations never happened. Perhaps you questioned why someone seemed distant without becoming cold, thoughtful without becoming absent. You interpreted those moments through the only perspective available to you. But stories often reveal only one side until the right chapter arrives. Imagine standing before a grand tapestry while looking only at its back. You would see loose threads crossing in every direction. They would seem tangled, unfinished, almost random. Only when the tapestry is turned around does every thread reveal its purpose. Your life has felt like looking at the back of that tapestry. The loose threads confused you. The pauses unsettled you. The unanswered questions tempted you to believe nothing meaningful was happening. Yet every thread has remained connected. Every delay has continued weaving toward something you could not yet recognize. Your soulmate has also been growing. They have learned that real love is not measured by dramatic promises but by quiet consistency. There were nights when they wanted to give up. Days when they questioned whether protecting you from unnecessary burdens was worth the loneliness it sometimes created. They wished they could explain everything. But deep within their heart, they sensed that rushing the story would only create more confusion. So they waited. Waiting is one of the hardest forms of faith. Anyone can move quickly. Few can remain still with hope. That quiet endurance became part of their journey. Meanwhile, your own path was changing in ways you did not notice. Small disappointments were shaping resilience. Unexpected kindness from strangers reminded you that goodness still exists. Moments of solitude slowly taught you to hear your own heart more clearly. None of it felt connected. Yet every experience prepared you for conversations that had not yet begun. Sometimes preparation feels ordinary while purpose quietly grows beneath it. There were mornings when you believed nothing had changed. Yet inside your spirit, courage had become slightly stronger. Compassion had become slightly deeper. Patience had stretched just a little farther. Growth rarely announces itself. It simply becomes visible one day when you realize you are responding differently than you once would have. That is how quiet miracles often unfold. Not with sudden explosions of certainty, but with gentle transformations that become undeniable over time. There is another truth hidden inside this story. Protection is never only about avoiding hardship. Sometimes it is about preserving hope. Hope is delicate. It can be weakened by unnecessary fear. It can become clouded by confusion. Your soulmate understood this, even when they struggled to understand it themselves. So instead of allowing fear to reach you before clarity arrived, they carried that uncertainty alone for a season. Not forever. Only until the path became clearer. There were moments when they almost reached out. Their hands hesitated. Their heart whispered your name. Yet something inside urged patience just a little longer. They were not running away. They were trying to walk wisely. Heaven, in this fictional story, watched every quiet step. Not because perfection was expected, but because sincere love was growing stronger through every difficult choice. Even your unanswered prayers were becoming part of that growth. You asked for peace. Sometimes peace arrived disguised as waiting. You asked for direction. Sometimes direction arrived through closed paths. You asked for reassurance. Sometimes reassurance came through gentle reminders that your story was still unfolding, even when nothing appeared to move. The chapters ahead cannot exist without these quiet pages. Every meaningful story contains moments where little seems to happen. Yet those are often the chapters where hearts change the most. Your soulmate is changing. You are changing. And somewhere beyond both of your awareness, circumstances are slowly aligning in ways neither of you could have planned alone. But there is still one piece missing. One conversation. One discovery. One quiet truth that has remained hidden from both of you. When that truth finally comes into the light, you will understand why so many unexpected turns happened exactly when they did. Until then, the silence continues to hold its secret. And that secret is closer to being revealed than either of you realizes. There comes a moment in every meaningful journey when the questions that once filled your heart begin to change. You no longer ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, a quieter and wiser question begins to rise within you. What is this season preparing me for? That question carries the beginning of understanding. In this fictional story, the answer has been drawing closer with every passing day. Your soulmate has not simply been protecting you from one difficult situation. They have been protecting the version of your heart that was still learning to trust after disappointment, still learning to hope after uncertainty, and still learning to believe that genuine love does not disappear simply because it becomes quiet for a while. There were moments when they almost told you everything. Their heart urged them forward. Their emotions wanted immediate relief. But deep inside, they sensed that revealing every detail too soon would place a burden on your shoulders before you had the strength to carry it with peace. So they waited once more. Waiting did not mean they cared less. It meant they cared enough to think beyond the present moment. That kind of love often goes unnoticed because it does not seek attention. It quietly chooses what is best, even when it receives no recognition. Meanwhile, your own journey continued in ways that seemed ordinary. You smiled on some days and struggled on others. You celebrated small victories while carrying private questions no one else could see. Yet every experience was shaping something beautiful within you. Your patience became deeper. Your compassion became gentler. Your ability to remain hopeful through uncertainty quietly grew stronger. None of these changes happened overnight. They unfolded like the first light before sunrise, so gradual that you hardly noticed until one day the darkness was no longer the same. Within this fictional message, heaven reminds you that lasting transformation rarely arrives all at once. It arrives one faithful step at a time. One unexpected lesson. One quiet act of courage. One decision to keep believing even when the outcome remains hidden. Your soulmate has been walking through that same kind of transformation. They have faced moments of doubt. They have questioned whether their silence would ever be understood. They wondered if protecting you from unnecessary pain would one day be mistaken for indifference. Those thoughts weighed heavily upon them. Yet each time uncertainty whispered, love answered more gently. Keep protecting. Keep trusting. Keep believing that the right moment will come. Those quiet whispers became their strength. Perhaps you have noticed unusual moments recently. A memory returning without explanation. A sudden feeling of peace after weeks of uncertainty. An unexpected reminder that someone, somewhere, still cares deeply. In this fictional story, those moments are not accidents. They are gentle echoes. Little reminders that your journey continues even when you cannot yet see its destination. Hope often arrives softly before truth becomes visible. The heart senses change long before the eyes recognize it. There is another reason this season has unfolded so carefully. Not everyone around you carries the same intentions. Some people enter a chapter only briefly. Some remain longer than expected. Others quietly step away when their purpose has ended. Your soulmate recognized that one particular situation carried unnecessary confusion. Rather than allowing you to become caught in that confusion, they chose patience. Not because they believed you were weak. Because they believed your peace was precious. Peace deserves protection. Not through fear. Not through control. But through wisdom. The kind of wisdom that understands not every battle deserves your attention. Not every rumor deserves your energy. Not every difficult moment deserves permanent space within your heart. Sometimes the greatest victory comes from continuing forward without carrying burdens that were never meant to become yours. That is exactly what has been happening beneath the surface. While you believed nothing extraordinary was taking place, quiet choices continued shaping a future filled with greater understanding. Each unnoticed act of kindness. Each prayer spoken in silence. Each decision to respond with grace instead of frustration. Together they became the foundation for something neither of you could yet imagine. And now, the season is beginning to change. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But gently, like morning light stretching across the horizon. The distance between hidden truth and joyful understanding is becoming smaller. Your soulmate feels it. You feel it, even if you cannot yet explain why. The atmosphere around this fictional story has begun to shift. The waiting has not ended. But it no longer feels endless. There is movement. There is preparation. There is a quiet sense that something long delayed is finally approaching its proper moment. Still, one final piece remains concealed. It is a truth neither of you expected. A simple discovery that will suddenly connect every unanswered question, every unexpected delay, and every silent act of protection into one unforgettable picture. When that moment arrives, both hearts will look back and realize that nothing meaningful was ever lost. It was only being lovingly prepared. And that revelation is waiting just beyond the next chapter. The quiet season has never been empty. It has only seemed that way because the most meaningful changes often happen where human eyes cannot easily see them. Like roots growing beneath the earth before a tree reaches toward the sky, your story has been strengthening beneath the surface long before its beauty becomes visible. In this fictional message, imagine that heaven gently whispers, "Do not measure your journey only by what has already appeared. Measure it also by what is quietly becoming possible." Your soulmate has carried that quiet hope every day. There were moments when they almost believed the waiting had lasted too long. They questioned whether the distance between your hearts would ever become smaller. Yet every time discouragement tried to settle in, another gentle reminder arrived. Not through thunder. Not through dramatic signs. But through peaceful certainty. A certainty that true care is never wasted. That every sincere prayer eventually finds its season. That every patient heart is being shaped into something stronger than it was before. While this was unfolding, you continued searching for answers in places that could never fully explain your story. You looked at circumstances. You looked at timing. You looked at missed opportunities. But the deepest answers were never hidden inside those events. They were hidden inside the hearts that continued choosing kindness, even when kindness required sacrifice. That is where this story has always lived. Not in fear. Not in uncertainty. But in quiet faithfulness. There is something your soulmate has come to understand. Love is not proven only when everything feels easy. It is revealed most clearly when someone quietly protects another person's peace without asking for recognition. They could have spoken out of frustration. They could have acted out of impatience. Instead, they chose gentleness. Every choice like that became another unseen gift placed into your future. You may never know every moment they wrestled with uncertainty. You may never hear every silent prayer they whispered. But within this fictional journey, each one mattered. Every act of restraint became another step toward healing. Every decision to wait became another bridge leading both of you toward greater understanding. At times, your own heart sensed that something meaningful was changing. Perhaps you could not explain why certain fears slowly began losing their strength. Perhaps hope returned unexpectedly after you thought it had faded. Those quiet changes were preparing you as well. Because lasting relationships are not built only by finding the right person. They are also built by becoming ready to receive one another with wisdom, compassion, and grace. Preparation has been happening on both sides. Neither journey has been wasted. Neither season has been meaningless. Even the pauses carried purpose. Think of a beautiful melody. The music is not created only by the notes. It is also shaped by the spaces between them. Without those quiet moments, the song would lose its beauty. Your story has contained many pauses. Moments when nothing seemed to happen. Moments when questions remained unanswered. Yet those pauses have given meaning to everything that follows. Now, something subtle is beginning to change. The atmosphere feels different. The uncertainty that once felt heavy is becoming lighter. Doors that remained firmly closed are beginning to loosen. Conversations that once seemed impossible are quietly moving closer. Not because everything has suddenly become perfect, but because hearts have grown. Wisdom has deepened. Fear has slowly released its grip. Your soulmate feels this shift, though they may not fully understand it. You feel it too, perhaps only as a gentle sense that your story is no longer standing still. The waiting season is giving way to a season of gentle revelation. Still, one final thread remains hidden. It is the smallest thread in the entire tapestry. So small that almost anyone would overlook it. Yet when it is finally revealed, you will understand why every unexpected delay, every unanswered question, and every quiet act of protection mattered. That single thread connects everything. It explains the silence. It explains the waiting. It explains why love chose patience instead of urgency. And when that final piece comes into the light, nothing in this fictional story will look the same again. The next chapter begins with that hidden thread, and once it is revealed, there will be no turning back. There is a quiet truth that has been waiting patiently at the edge of your story, not because it wished to remain hidden forever, but because some truths reveal their beauty only after the heart has been gently prepared to receive them. Within this fictional message, imagine heaven looking upon two journeys that have been moving toward one another from opposite directions. Neither path has been perfect. Each has been marked by moments of courage, seasons of uncertainty, unexpected detours, and quiet victories that no one else ever celebrated. Yet every step has mattered. While you wondered whether the silence meant distance, your soulmate was learning one of the deepest lessons love can teach, that protecting another person's peace sometimes requires carrying unanswered questions with grace. They discovered that love is not measured by how loudly it announces itself. It is measured by what it quietly preserves. There were opportunities to choose the easier path. They could have allowed frustration to shape their decisions. They could have spoken before wisdom had fully formed. They could have mistaken urgency for purpose. Instead, they chose patience again and again, even when patience felt lonely. Those choices did not make headlines within this story. But heaven noticed every one of them. And little by little, those quiet decisions began changing the future in ways neither of you could yet understand. At the same time, your own heart was being transformed. You may have believed you were simply enduring another ordinary season. But every disappointment that taught compassion, every delay that strengthened perseverance, every unexpected kindness that reminded you not to give up, each experience became another piece of the person you are becoming. Growth often feels invisible while it is happening. Only later do you look back and realize that the version of yourself who once stood at the beginning of the journey no longer exists. You have become gentler, stronger, wiser, more willing to hope without demanding immediate answers. That quiet transformation has been one of the greatest miracles in this fictional story. Because lasting love does not simply arrive. It meets two hearts that have been prepared through time. Your soulmate has sensed this change as well. Recently, moments of unexpected peace have begun replacing old fears. Questions that once felt overwhelming no longer carry the same weight. Where uncertainty once spoke loudly, quiet confidence has begun to grow. It is as though dawn is slowly replacing the final shadows of night. The light has not yet reached every corner. But it is coming. There is something else you have not yet realized. The difficult situation your soulmate has been quietly protecting you from has also been changing. Time has softened what once seemed impossible. Misunderstandings have begun to lose their strength. Circumstances that once appeared firmly fixed are slowly shifting. Not because anyone forced them to change, but because truth has a gentle way of revealing itself when hearts become ready. That is why patience has mattered so much. Sometimes rushing toward an answer only delays the peace that answer is meant to bring. Sometimes waiting allows confusion to settle on its own. And sometimes the greatest gift is not receiving immediate clarity, but receiving it at exactly the right moment. Your story has been moving toward that moment all along. Even now, unseen pieces continue finding their place. Small conversations, unexpected opportunities, quiet moments of reflection. Each one carries more significance than it first appears. Nothing has been random within this fictional journey. Everything has been gently woven together. And now, there is a feeling that something long awaited is drawing near. Not with noise. Not with dramatic spectacle. But with the calm certainty that often accompanies genuine hope. Your soulmate feels it. You feel it. Neither of you can fully explain it. Yet both hearts are beginning to recognize that this chapter cannot remain unfinished forever. Still, one final revelation has not yet been spoken. It is the reason the silence lasted as long as it did. It is the reason certain doors remained closed while others quietly opened. It is the reason both of your journeys had to grow separately before they could truly understand one another. When that final truth comes into the light, every unanswered question from these earlier chapters will begin to make sense. The hidden acts of protection will no longer seem mysterious. The waiting will no longer feel empty. And the quiet love that has been shaping this entire fictional story will finally reveal why it chose patience over haste from the very beginning. That moment is closer now than ever before. But its full meaning belongs to the next chapter.